Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are in the last chapter of the book of Ezekiel, chapter 48. Now, we have been, from chapters 40 to 48, has been an extensive detail on the construction of the temple's service, and really kind of a restoration of Israel's temple worship, temple service. And as I said, I think I kind of made a mistake in assuming that the prophetic vision was for an end times fulfillment. I don't believe that. I wouldn't argue with anybody on it. In other words, because I don't think, as we're reading here in Ezekiel, that it is crystal clear. I'm going to finish chapter 48, and then I'm going to show you why I believe that what he is referring to is um, um, a a post exile temple setting. Now, one of the reasons that I have a hard time reconciling that this temple here would be something in the future, end times, is because the setting of it would then say that God is restoring a Levitical law system after the coming of Jesus Christ, meaning after his death, burial, and resurrection, his offering for sin. And from that time, we see that Jesus is always the point of salvation, that you don't go back to the Levitical law after Jesus then has offered his body. As the book of Hebrews tells us, he has once and for all offered his body, once and for all, forever. So then why would we go back to this Levitical system here? And again, I thought my mistake was just because it was a vision, and especially coming off of chapter 39, when God is talking about the end time scenario of Gog and Magog bringing the nations against Israel to destroy them. But anyway, let's bring it up. Let me say this again, since I'm skimming through a lot of the details, this is probably the artist's rendition of what the temple may look like. And let's go to our, let's see here, chapters 48. Now, this is going to be sort of, that's the end. And basically, this is the land. And I believe it is coming to the end of this is, remember, Ezekiel is about somewhere around the neighborhood of 50 years from the 70-year exile coming to an end. So I'm going to read this because basically, primarily, this is just the division of the land, kind of the same thing we saw in the book of Numbers, the same thing we saw at the beginning of the book of Joshua. But then also with this prophecy, you see the temple, as opposed to the tabernacle, that the temple construction is attached to it. So verse 48 says, "Now these are the names of the tribes from the northern end along the road of Hithlon and Lebo Hamath, as far as Hezron at the northern borders of Damascus, alongside of Hemath, and extending from the northern side to the sea would be Dan, and then one portion, and then after that it says Asher, and then after that, and after Asher would be Naphtali, and then from Naphtali it would be Manasseh, and then from Manasseh would be Ephraim. Now Manasseh and Ephraim are Joseph's two sons, okay? And then after that would be Reuben, and then from Reuben will be Judah, okay? So those are some of the portions there, right? How many sons is that? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we got a few more to go. Verse 8 says, next to the territory of Judah, from the east side to the west, would be the portion you donate to the Lord, 8.5 miles wide, and as long as one of the tribal portions to the east to the west. The sanctuary would be in the middle of it. So that's a nice chunk of land, 8.5 miles. If you think about 8.5 miles, okay, wide, the special portion donated to the Lord would be 8.5 miles long and 3.5 miles wide. So kind of again, this is some land. The holy donation would be set apart for the priests alone. It would be 8.5 long on the northern side and 3.3 miles on the western side. I did say 8.5. I meant 8.3 from the last time. Okay, 8.3. Make that correction. And then since the Lord's sanctuary would be in the middle of it, it would be for the consecrated priests, the sons of Zodok, who kept my charge and did not go astray as the Levites did when the Israelites went astray. It would be a special donation for them out of the holy donation of the land, a most holy place adjacent to the territory for the Levites. Next, the territory of the Levites. The Levites will have 8.3 miles long and 3.3 miles wide. The total length would be at 8.3 miles, and The total length would be 8.3 miles, and width 3.3 miles. They must not sell or exchange it, and they must not transfer this choice portion of the land, for it is holy to the Lord. For they were never ever to give that. Now, also, let me just say this: you see now where the practice, and pagans practice this too, where they would give this land in buildings dedicated for holy service, worship service. The reigning area, 1 2/3 of a mile wide and 1/8 long, would be for the common use for the city, by the city, for both residential and open spaces. The city will be in the middle of it. These are the city's measurements. And then it says, north, 1.5 miles north, south, east, and west. The city's open spaces will be 425 feet north, south, east, and west. Then the remainder of the length along the holy designation will be 3.3 miles to the east, 3.3 miles to the west. It will run along the holy donations. It will produce its produce will be food for the workers of the city. The city's workers from all the tribes of Israel were cultivated. The entire donation of the land would be 8.3 miles by 8.3 miles. And you are to set apart the holy donations along with the city property as a city square. So again, you see, they're going to get a nice little chunk of land. The remaining areas on both sides of the holy donation of the city property will belong to the prince. He will own the land adjacent to the tribal portions next to the 8.3 miles of donation forest, the east border next to the 8.3 miles of donation forest, the western border. The holy donations of the sanctuary temple will be in the middle of it, except for the Levitical property and the city property in the middle area belonging to the prince. Area between the territory of Judah and Benjamin will belong to the prince. As far as the rest of the tribes, from the east side to the west side will be Benjamin, and then next to Benjamin will be Simon. Next to Simon, Issachar, and that's Issachar, Zebulun, and then Gad. And then it says next to the territory of Gad will be the south side. The border will run from Tamar to the waters of Meribah Kadesh to the brook of Egypt, and out of the Mediterranean Sea. This is the land you are allotted, the inheritance of Israel's tribe. These will be their portion. This is a declaration of the Lord God. So again, all of this land, let me say this, or let me finish. It said, these are the exits of the city. On the north side, which measures 1.5 miles, and there will be 3 gates facing north, the gate of the city being named for the tribes of Israel. 1, the gate of Reuben. 1, the gate of Judah. On the 1 gate of the gate of Levi. On the east side, which is 1.5 miles, There would be 3 gates, one Joseph, Benjamin, and then Dan. And on the south side, it would measure half a mile. There would be 3 gates, Simon, and the Issachar, and the gate of Zebulun. And on the west side, there would be, again, which is the mile and a half, would be 3 gates. On the gate, the gate would be Gad, and then Asher, and Naphtali. The perimeter of the city would be 6 miles, and the name of this city from that day will be Yahweh is there. Now, so one, this is the end of the book of of, of Ezekiel's prophecy. Now, again, Ezekiel's prophecy, the timeline, which will be from this point now to the actual exile, and we're going to see this when we get to Daniel's book. Daniel and Ezekiel are contemporaries. They are existing around the same period of time. Now, what I want to do is I want to go to Ezra, because Ezra has a very important prophecy that I think will shed some light here. And Daniel prophesies this. Again, we'll get to this, like I said, at the beginning of the next study. We're going to study the book of Daniel. And then in verse 1, this is chapter 1. So this is Ezra. It says, in the first year of King Cyrus, king of Persia, the word of the Lord spoken through Jeremiah was fulfilled. Now, Daniel in chapter 9 was reading this. He's reading the 70-year exile when he begins to pray. And then from that also is given the 70-week prophecies. But when he begins to read that, one of the things he says, in the first year of the king of Cyrus, the word of the Lord that was spoken through Jeremiah was fulfilled, the Lord put it into the mind of King Cyrus to issue a proclamation throughout his entire kingdom and put it in writing. This is King Cyrus, king of Persia, says, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build him a house at Jerusalem in Judah. And then it says, whoever among his people, may his God be with him, and may he go to Jerusalem in Judah to build the house of the Lord, the God of Israel, the God is in Jerusalem, that every survivor, whoever lives, and assisted them by men of the region with the silver, gold, and livestock, along with the fruitful offerings for the house of God. Kind of interesting. Cyrus also given the money to get all these things here. But notice what he says, right? He's going to build a house. I'm going to skip down to chapter 2. And these are some of the names, these are some of the people that came with him. I want you to pay attention to also verse 2 that came with Zerubbabel. He's sort of the leader. And then Nehemiah, you see in the next book. Mordecai, interesting. Mordecai, it's the same Mordecai that appears in the book of Esther. Not sure if it's the same Mordecai, though. All right. Here's what I want you to see. Let's skip down here. These are all the people that came back from Babylon. So then, here, verse 68, it said, after they arrived at the Lord's house in Jerusalem, some of the family leaders gave freewill offerings for the house of God in order to have it rebuilt on the original site. So again, you saw some of the same thing to get everything that the vision and instruction that Ezekiel saw. Notice he said they're going to rebuild this house here. Okay. Then it says, verse chapter 3 now, by the 7th month, the Israelites had settled in their towns, and the people gathered together in Jerusalem. And Jeshua, should be probably Joshua, the son of Zadok, and his brothers and the priests, along with Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brothers began to build the altar of Israel, God, to offer burnt offerings on it, as it's written in the law of Moses, the man of God. They set up the altars on its foundation, and the offering offered burnt offerings for the morning, evening on it to the Lord, and even bought, even though they feared the people around him. They celebrated the festival of booths as prescribed, and offered burnt offerings each day based upon the number of specified ordinance each festival. And after that, they offered the regular burnt offerings and offerings beginning of each month, and for all the Lord appointed holy occasions, as the free will offerings they brought to the Lord. Now, here's my thing. To me, this is kind of a fulfillment here of what Ezekiel did. Remember these long chapters from 40 to 48. Look at verse 8. In the second month, in the second year after they arrived at God's house in Jerusalem, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, Joshua, son of Josedek, and the rest of their brothers, including the priests, the Levites, and all who had returned to Jerusalem from their captivity, began to build. They appointed the Levites who were 20 years old or more to supervise the work of the Lord's house. Jeshua with his sons and brothers, Kadmiel with his sons, with the sons of Judah, and then Henadad with their sons and brothers, and Levites joined together to supervise those working on the house of God. And then it says, when the builders had laid the foundation of the Lord's temple, the priests dressed in their robes, holding their trumpets, and the Levites descended from Asaph, holding cymbals, and took their positions and praise to the Lord, the King, as the King of David had instructed them, saying with the praise and thanksgiving to the Lord, for he is good, his faithful love to Israel endures forever. Then all the people gave a shout of praise because the foundation of the Lord's temple had been laid. And then it says, but many of the older priests and Levites and families who had seen the first temple wept loudly when they saw the foundation of the house. But many of them shouted joyfully, for the people could not distinguish the sound of the joyful shouting from the weeping, because the people shouted so loudly as the sound was heard far away. Let me see here. I want to see if right here when it talks about there was some opposition to the so let me skip down and let me just say here, because look at verse 13. Then Tatania, governor of the region west of the Euphrates River, Shaltabantha and their colleagues diligently carried out what the king Darius had decreed, so the Jewish elders continued successfully with the building under the prophesying of Haggai. Now we're going to get to Haggai down the road here, Haggai the prophet. And then Zechariah, son of Edo. So these two prophets, those books, remember there's 3 books now from the post-exile, Haggai, Zechariah, and then Malachi. But and then notice that they finished the building according to the command of God of Israel and the decrees of Cyrus, Darius, the king of Artaxerxes of Persia. This house was completed on the 3rd day of the month of Adar in the 6th year of the reign of King of Darius. Okay. Now, here is what I want to say. As far as what we saw in Ezekiel, and that is, and some people I think some scholars will dispute if the Ezekiel temple is the temple that was built there by Ezra, Zerubbabel, and then all those people. I think that is where the foundation, the fulfillment is, that what Ezekiel saw. Then we see the temple actually being built. And if there is a future temple, again, some of the questions with that would be, and you have to ask the questions, to me anyway, where would the temple services, sacrifices, the priest duties fit after the coming of the Messiah who offered his body once and for all for sin? All right, guys, that is the book of Ezekiel. Next study, the book of Daniel. So don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. And remember, all comments are welcome. And I'll see you in Daniel.